"Can I feel your warmth tonight?" asked the orc woman. His answer surprised her. Some questions change everything, not because of what they ask, but because of who's asking. This is a story about a question asked on the coldest night of winter, between two people who should never have met. One cursed to freeze everyone she touches. One who'd already lost everything to cold before she ever found him. And sometimes the warmest thing you can offer someone isn't your fire. It's your choice to stay when staying means freezing together. The fire crackled like bones breaking. That's what Castor thought every time he looked at the flames. That somewhere in those orange tongues of heat, something was dying to keep him warm. Maybe that's why he always built his fires too small. Guilt has a way of making you ration even the things you desperately need. He'd been traveling for 3 weeks through the Thornwood Forest, a stretch of territory where human villages ended and orc settlements began. Not exactly enemy territory anymore. The treaties had held for 15 years, but not friendly either. More like two neighbors who'd agreed to stop killing each other but hadn't quite figured out how to say good morning yet. The forest at night had a particular kind of silence, the kind that made you aware of your own breathing, the kind that reminded you that you were very small and very alone, and that the darkness didn't particularly care about either of those facts. Castor pulled his cloak tighter. Beneath it, wrapped carefully in oilcloth, was the reason he was out here. A letter from the Merchant Guild in Millhaven to a trading post on the edge of orc territory. Boring work, safe work, the kind of work a man took when he decided that living quietly was better than living at all. He'd just started to consider whether he should add more wood to the fire. Guilt be damned, it was getting cold enough to justify it. When he heard it. Footsteps. Not the careful, quiet footsteps of someone trying to sneak. Not the aggressive, purposeful footsteps of someone looking for trouble. Just footsteps. Heavy ones. Someone walking through a forest at night like it was the most normal thing in the world. Castor's hand moved to the knife at his belt. Not drawing it. Just touching it. A reminder that it was there if needed. The footsteps stopped at the edge of his firelight. "Can I feel your warmth tonight?" The voice was female. Deep, with the particular roughness that came from orc vocal cords, like gravel rolling down a hill, but somehow still musical. The kind of voice that human minstrels tried to imitate when they sang epic ballads and always got wrong. Castor looked up. She stood at the very edge of where firelight met darkness, like she wasn't quite sure if she was allowed to come closer. An orc woman, maybe 28 or 30 by human reckoning, though Castor had learned that guessing orc ages was like trying to count rings on a tree that had been struck by lightning. Everything got complicated. She wasn't what humans pictured when they thought of orcs. No hulking brute, no massive warrior covered in scars and rage. She was tall, about his height actually, which was unusual, with green skin that looked almost gray in the firelight. Her hair was long and dark, tied back in a practical braid. She wore travel clothes that had seen better days, a worn leather pack on her shoulders, and no weapon that Castor could see. What struck him most were her eyes. They had the kind of tiredness that didn't come from lack of sleep, the kind that settled into you over years and made a permanent home in your bones. "It's cold out here," she added when he didn't immediately respond. "Colder than it should be this time of year. And I've been walking for a long time." Castor had exactly 3 seconds to make a decision. 3 seconds to weigh 2 decades of human-orc tensions against the simple fact that it was, indeed, cold as hell out here, and he'd been taught by his mother, rest her soul, that you didn't leave people to freeze. "You can share the fire," he said. She blinked, like she'd expected him to say no, like people always said no. "I can? Fire doesn't belong to anyone," Castor said, which was a thing his father used to say. "It's just warmth, and warmth doesn't care who's green and who's not." For a moment she just stood there, still at the edge of darkness. Then she stepped forward into the light, and Castor got his first proper look at her. She moved like someone who'd learned to take up as little space as possible. Shoulders slightly hunched, steps careful, the way you walked when you'd spent years being told you didn't belong places. It made something uncomfortable twist in Castor's chest, because he recognized it. He'd walked that way for the first year after Marin died. She sat down across the fire from him, setting her pack beside her with the kind of care people use for things that contain everything they own. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Most humans would have told me to keep walking." "Most humans are idiots," Castor replied. Then, because that sounded harsher than he meant it, he added, "I'm Castor." "Kessa." She held her hands toward the fire, and Castor noticed they were shaking. Not from fear, from cold. The kind of shaking that came from being cold for so long that your body had forgotten what warmth felt like. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled, the forest whispered, and slowly, painfully slowly, the shaking in Kessa's hands began to ease. "How long have you been out here?" Castor asked eventually, because the silence was starting to feel heavier than conversation. "Traveling? 4 years. In this forest specifically. 3 days. 4 years. Castor tried to imagine spending 4 years on the road and couldn't. He'd been traveling for 3 weeks and was already exhausted. That's a long time to be moving. Yes. She didn't elaborate, just stared into the flames like they contained answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. Castor pulled out his travel rations. Dried meat, hard bread, a small block of cheese that had seen better days. He split it in half without asking and pushed her share across the ground between them. Kessa looked at the food, then at him, then back at the food. "You don't have to—" "When did you last eat?" Castor interrupted. She was quiet for a moment. "Yesterday morning." "Then you have to." He took a bite of his own portion to make it clear this wasn't charity, just shared supplies between travelers. She picked up the bread slowly, like it might disappear if she moved too fast. The first bite she took was small, controlled. The second bite was less controlled. By the third, she was eating the way people eat when they've been rationing hunger for too long. "Thank you," she said again when she'd finished. "You're kinder than I expected." "What did you expect?" "Honestly?" She met his eyes across the fire. "I expected you to tell me to leave. Maybe throw something at me. That's what usually happens when I ask humans for anything." There was no bitterness in her voice, just statement of fact, the way you'd comment on weather. Castor felt that uncomfortable twist in his chest again. "That's happened to you? People throwing things?" "Rocks mostly. Words always." "It's fine. I understand. Orcs and humans have history." She said the word history, the way you'd say open wound, acknowledging pain without dwelling on it. The wind picked up, making the fire dance and sending a wave of cold that cut through even Castor's cloak. Kessa pulled her own cloak tighter, but it was thin, travel-worn. The kind of thing that had been patched so many times the patches had patches. Castor made his second decision of the night. "I have a tent," he said. "It's small, but it's warmer than sleeping in the open. You can use it tonight if you want." This time, the shock on Kessa's face was impossible to miss. "You're offering me your tent? I'm offering to share it. Unless you'd rather freeze, which I don't recommend. I tried that once. Terrible for your health." "But I'm—" She gestured vaguely at herself, at her green skin, at the fact that she was an orc and he was human and there were 1,000 years of blood between their peoples. "Cold," Castor finished. "You're cold, and I have a tent and a blanket big enough for 2 if we don't mind being close. Everything else is just complications, and I'm too tired for complications tonight." Kessa stared at him for a long moment. In the firelight, her eyes looked almost amber, almost human, almost not. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." "Could be. But you asked permission to share a fire instead of just taking it. That tells me more than I need to know." Castor stood up, brushing dirt from his trousers. "Tent's over there. I need to bank the fire first, but I'll be in shortly. You can take the side away from the entrance if you want." He expected more questions, more hesitation, but Kessa just nodded slowly and picked up her pack. "Thank you, Castor," she said. And there was something in the way she said his name, careful, like it was fragile, that made him wonder how long it had been since she'd had reason to thank anyone for anything. The tent was indeed small, army surplus, designed for one soldier who didn't mind sleeping with his knees bent. For 2 people, it meant sleeping close enough to hear each other breathe. Castor finished banking the fire and ducked inside. Kessa had already claimed the far side, her pack serving as a pillow, her thin cloak pulled around her shoulders. "Here," Castor said, unfolding the red blanket he'd been carrying. It was old, faded from what had once been a deep crimson to something closer to rust. Patches covered holes. The edges were frayed, but it was thick, and more importantly, it was warm. "We'll share this. It's cold enough tonight that we'll both need it." For the 3rd time that night, Kessa looked at him like he'd just offered her a kingdom instead of a threadbare blanket. "That's yours," she said softly. "And I'm sharing it. That's how blankets work." Castor lay down on his side of the tent, pulling half the blanket over himself. The other half he left pointedly available. Kessa hesitated one more heartbeat. Then she lay down, careful to maintain a respectful distance, and pulled the other half of the blanket over herself. The blanket smelled like wood smoke and old wool, and faintly, very faintly, like lavender. Like someone had once stored it with dried flowers and the scent had never quite left. "Your wife?" Kessa asked quietly. Castor went still. "How did you—" "Lavender. And the way you looked at the blanket before you offered it, like you were saying goodbye to something." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked." "No, it's—" Castor exhaled slowly. "Yes, my wife, Marin. She died 3 years ago. Winter fever. This was hers. She made it herself. Spent 2 months weaving it because she wanted it to be perfect." He paused. "You're the first person I've shared it with since." The tent was silent except for the distant sound of wind through trees and the tiny noises of 2 people breathing in close proximity. "I'm honored," Kessa whispered, "to be trusted with something that precious." "It's just a blanket," Castor said. But they both knew he was lying. They lay there in the darkness, not touching but close enough to feel body heat starting to build between them under the shared blanket. Castor waited for sleep to come. Instead, what came was an unexpected sense of peace. Like for the first time in 3 years, the cold ache in his chest had eased just a little. "Castor?" Kessa's voice was barely audible. "Thank you for not seeing me as a monster. Thank you for not being one," he replied. He heard her make a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something else. Then, gradually, her breathing evened out into the rhythm of sleep. Castor lay awake a while longer, staring at the roof of the tent and wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. Wondering why helping someone had felt so natural when being human had felt so hard for so long. Eventually, exhaustion pulled him under, and he dreamed of fires that never went out, and blankets that smelled like lavender and kindness that didn't cost anything except the willingness to give it. He didn't dream about the cold that was coming. Morning arrived the way it always did in the Thornwood, gradually and reluctantly, like it wasn't quite sure it wanted to commit to being day yet. Gray light filtered through the tent fabric, turning everything inside into shades of shadow. Castor woke up warm, warmer than he'd been in months. His first thought was that maybe he'd built the fire better than usual. His second thought came when he realized why he was warm. Sometime during the night, he and Kessa had moved closer together, not pressed against each other, but close enough that body heat had pooled between them, close enough that he could feel her presence like a physical weight in the small space. He lay very still, not wanting to wake her, not wanting to acknowledge the strange comfort of not being alone. Then he became aware of something else. A sound. Quiet. Regular. She was crying, not sobbing. Not the dramatic crying of grief or pain. Just silent tears that came the way rain comes after drought. Inevitable. Unstoppable. Almost gentle. "Kessa?" Castor's voice was rough with sleep. "Are you okay?" She went very still, held her breath. Then, "I'm fine. I'm sorry. Go back to sleep. It's morning, and you're crying. I don't think either of those things qualify as fine." For a long moment she said nothing. Then, very quietly, "I forgot. That's all. I forgot what it felt like to be warm next to another person, to not be alone. And now I remember, and it's—" She didn't finish the sentence. Castor turned over to face her. In the gray morning light, he could see tears on her green cheeks, tracking down like silver trails. "Why have you been alone?" he asked gently. And that's when Kessa's expression changed. The softness left it. What replaced it was something heavier, sadder, the look of someone about to confess something they've been carrying for far too long. "Because I had to be," she said. She sat up, pulling away from the warmth of the shared blanket, wrapping her arms around herself. "Castor, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you last night before you let me into your tent." There was something in her voice that made Castor's stomach drop. "What is it?" Kessa took a shaky breath. 4 years ago, I lived in an orc settlement called Cragmore. It was small, traditional. We had a shaman, a chieftain, and about 200 people living in relative peace. She paused. "I was engaged to be married, to a warrior named Torgun. We'd known each other since we were children." She fell silent. Castor waited. "There was a woman in our settlement, Kelmara, old, even by orc standards. She'd been the shaman before our current one. But she'd been pushed aside, made irrelevant. She didn't take it well. Kessa's hands were trembling now. She blamed me. Said I'd convinced the chieftain to replace her, which wasn't true. I'd never said a word about her, but she believed it anyway. What did she do? Castor asked, though he was increasingly certain he didn't want to know the answer. She cursed me. Kessa's voice was barely a whisper now. During the winter solstice celebration, in front of the entire settlement, she cursed me with words that rhymed and magic that stuck. She said, Kessa closed her eyes. She said, "May you feel the cold of loneliness eternal. May warmth flee from you, cold internal. Any who share your bed shall share your frost, until love's price is paid," and heeded the cost. The tent suddenly felt much colder. I didn't understand what she meant, not at first. But that night, when Torgun and I slept beside each other like we had 100 times before, her voice cracked. He woke up freezing, shaking so hard his teeth chattered. No matter how many blankets we piled on, no matter how close to the fire he got, he couldn't get warm. Not really warm. Not the way you're supposed to feel warm from the inside. Castor felt his own blood turning cold. The curse made it so that anyone who sleeps near me shares the cold inside me. The loneliness, the isolation. It's not physical cold. It's deeper. It's the kind of cold that makes you feel empty even when you're not. That makes warmth feel like a memory instead of a reality. How long does it last? Castor managed to ask. Kessa finally looked at him. Her amber eyes were drowning in guilt. I don't know. Torgun still had it when I left, 4 years ago. I don't know if he still has it now. She took a shuddering breath. I left Cragmore the morning after it happened. I couldn't stay. Couldn't watch Torgun suffer. Couldn't risk hurting anyone else. So I've been traveling ever since. 4 years of sleeping alone. 4 years of keeping distance from everyone. 4 years of being cold. She was crying openly now. And last night I was so tired, Castor. So tired and so cold, and you were so kind, and I thought maybe just one night. Just one night where I could pretend I wasn't cursed. Where I could feel what it's like to not be alone. She covered her face with her hands. But I cursed you. I cursed you because I was selfish. Because I wanted one night of warmth more than I wanted to protect a stranger who showed me kindness. The information settled over Castor like the blanket they'd shared. Heavy. Inescapable. He became aware of something he'd been ignoring since he woke up. A feeling. Not cold exactly. More like absence. Like there was a space inside him where warmth should be, and it was just empty. He thought about getting up and walking away. Thought about being angry. Thought about all the reasonable reactions to being cursed by someone you'd tried to help. Instead, he asked, "Is there a cure?" Kessa lowered her hands, blinked at him through tears. What? The curse, is there a cure? Or is it permanent? I don't know. Kelmara said something about love's price and heeded the cost, but I never understood what she meant. I tried to find her, to make her lift it, but she disappeared after cursing me. No one's seen her since. Castor was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he did something that surprised both of them. He reached across the small space between them and took Kessa's hand. Her skin was warm. Normal, not cold at all. You're not physically cold, he observed. No, the curse isn't about temperature, it's about emptiness. It's about making you feel alone even when you're not. And you've been carrying this alone for 4 years. I had to. I couldn't. You didn't have to, Castor interrupted gently. You chose to. There's a difference. You chose to protect people by isolating yourself. That's not selfishness, Kessa. That's sacrifice. She stared at him like he'd just spoken in a language she didn't understand. But I cursed you last night. You're cursed now because you needed help and I offered it. Castor squeezed her hand. You didn't trick me. You didn't lie. You asked to share a fire and I said yes. You didn't even ask to share the tent. I offered that. The curse happened because I chose kindness. And honestly, he gave a small, sad smile. I'd rather be cursed from kindness than safe from cruelty. I've tried being safe. It's lonelier than you'd think. You don't understand. The curse is inside me now. I get it. I can feel it. That weird emptiness, like something's missing that used to be there. He was quiet for a moment. But I've felt that before, Kessa. For 3 years, since Marin died. I've felt exactly that kind of emptiness. So maybe I'm cursed now. Or maybe I was already cursed. And your magic just knew where to find the cold that was already there. They sat there in the gray morning light, hands still touching, two people carrying cold they never asked for. "What do we do now?" Kessa whispered. Castor thought about it. Thought about his simple courier job. Thought about his simple life. Thought about the 3 years he'd spent being safe and alone and empty. "We figure out how to break the curse," he said. "We?" "You said Kelmara mentioned something about love's price and heeded the cost, right? That sounds like conditions, like something that can be met. So we meet them. We find out what breaks the curse, and we break it." "Why would you help me? I ruined your life." "My life was already pretty ruined," Castor said honestly. "At least now I have a purpose besides delivering letters and sleeping alone." He paused. "Besides, you asked to feel my warmth last night. Maybe figuring out how to break this curse is how I give it to you. The real kind. The kind that lasts." Kessa was crying again, but it was different now. Not grief. Something else. Something that might have been hope. "I don't deserve this," she said. "Probably not," Castor agreed. "But I don't deserve a lot of things I've gotten in life, both good and bad. That's just how it works." He stood up, still holding her hand, and pulled her gently to her feet. "Come on. First rule of curse breaking. You can't do it on an empty stomach. Let's have breakfast and figure out our next move." As they emerged from the tent into the cold morning air, Castor noticed something. The emptiness inside him was still there, but it felt less heavy somehow. Like sharing the burden made it lighter. Like maybe warmth wasn't something you found. Maybe it was something you built. One choice at a time. One moment of refusing to let cold win. They built a new fire, shared what little food remained, and began planning how to undo a curse that neither of them had asked for but both of them would have to carry until they found a way to break it. The warmth between them wasn't physical. Not yet. But it was there. Fragile. Hopeful. Like the first spark before a flame catches. Sometimes that's all you need to start a fire that burns away curses. Just a spark, and the willingness to protect it. Breaking a curse, as it turned out, required information neither of them had. Castor had spent 3 days trying to figure out their next move. 3 days of traveling with Kessa toward the settlement where he was supposed to deliver his letter. 3 days of waking up feeling that strange emptiness inside him. 3 days of watching Kessa carry guilt that weighed more than her pack. The settlement of Millhaven sat on the border between human and orc territories. One of the few places where both peoples traded freely, bound by treaties and mutual interest in not starving. It wasn't friendly exactly, but it was functional. Humans sold grain and metalwork. Orcs sold furs and herbs that didn't grow in human territories. Everyone conducted business with weapons in easy reach and left as quickly as politeness allowed. Castor delivered his letter to the Merchant Guild representative, a thin man named Phineas, who had the particular look of someone who'd spent 40 years not caring about things that didn't affect profit margins. 3 days late, Phineas observed, checking the seal on the letter. Got delayed. Castor replied shortly. Weather? Something like that. Phineas counted out payment. 30 silver coins that clinked into Castor's hand with the specific sound of money that wasn't enough for the trouble it represented. You heading back to the capital? Eventually. Need to handle something first. Handle something? Phineas raised an eyebrow. Then his gaze shifted past Castor's shoulder to where Kessa waited at the edge of the market square. Hood pulled up, trying to look inconspicuous. Ah, handle someone, you mean? That your orc girl? She's not anyone's girl, Castor said flatly. And that's not your business. Touchy. Phineas tucked the letter into his coat. Word of advice, courier. Mixed company might be legal nowadays, but that doesn't make it smart. Humans don't like seeing their kind getting cozy with greenskins. And orcs sure as hell don't like seeing their women with humans. You keep walking around with her. You're going to find trouble. I'll risk it. Your funeral. Phineas turned to leave, then paused. Though if you're looking for information about curse work, there's a tavern at the east end of town. The Split Barrel. Owner's name is Rowena. She knows things she probably shouldn't. Might be able to help. Might also rob you blind. Hard to say with that one. Castor blinked. How did you know I was looking for... You're traveling with an orc woman who looks like she's carrying the weight of the world. You're asking vague questions about handling something, and you have the particular smell of someone who hasn't slept well in days. Doesn't take a genius to figure out someone's got magical problems. Phineas shrugged. Like I said, Split Barrel, East End. Good luck. He walked away before Castor could respond. The split barrel was exactly what it sounded like. A tavern built around an actual split barrel that now served as the bar. It was early enough that only a handful of patrons were present. 2 human farmers arguing about crop prices, an orc merchant checking her inventory ledger, and a woman behind the bar who Castor assumed was Rowena. She was in her 50s with gray-streaked brown hair and the kind of face that made you uncertain whether she was going to help you or stab you. Possibly both. 2 ales, Castor said, approaching the bar. Don't serve orcs, Rowena replied without looking up from the glass she was cleaning. Then 1 ale and 1 water. Don't serve orc sympathizers either. Castor sighed. Look, we're not here to cause trouble. We just need information. Information costs extra, especially information about curse work, which I'm guessing is why you're here, given that your friend over there is radiating the particular energy of someone who pissed off a witch. Kessa, who'd been standing quietly near the door, stiffened. Rowena finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp. Too sharp. The kind of sharp that came from seeing things other people missed. Come here, Greenskin. Let me look at you properly. Kessa glanced at Castor, who nodded. She approached the bar slowly. Rowena studied her for a long moment. Then she made a small noise of understanding. Kelmara's work. I'd recognize her rhyming curses anywhere. That old bat always had a flair for the dramatic. She set down the glass. Loneliness curse, isn't it? The one where anyone who gets close to you shares the cold inside you. How did you? I see auras. Magical signatures. Yours is all frost and isolation. Pretty obvious once you know what you're looking at. Rowena turned to Castor. And you've got the same signature now, just weaker. Let me guess. Shared a bed. Shared warmth. Shared curse. Can you break it? Castor asked. Me? No, I'm good. But I'm not undoing Kelmara's spite good. That woman was a master of curse weaving before she went insane. Rowena paused. But I might know how you can break it yourselves. How? Kelmara's curses always have conditions. Riddles baked into the magic. You solve the riddle, you break the curse. Problem is, she's cryptic as hell. Rowena pulled out a small leather journal from under the bar and flipped through pages covered in cramped handwriting. Let's see. Kelmara, here we go. May warmth flee from you, cold internal. Any who share your bed shall share your frost, until love's price is paid, and heeded the cost. That's what she said, Kessa whispered. Right. So let's break it down. Until love's price is paid. That's your condition. You need to pay the price of love. But what's the price? Rowena tapped her finger on the bar. Kelmara was old-school orc. Traditional values. To her, love wasn't just a feeling. It was sacrifice, choice, commitment even when it's hard. So we need to, what? Prove we love each other? Castor asked. You need to choose each other. Fully. Despite the curse. Despite the cost. Despite the fact that staying together means staying cold. Rowena met their eyes. The curse feeds on loneliness and isolation. It breaks when 2 people choose connection despite it. When they decide that being cold together is better than being warm alone. The tavern was quiet. That's it? Kessa's voice was small. We just stay together? Not just stay together. Commit to staying together. Marriage by orc or human custom doesn't matter which. The kind of commitment that means you're choosing this person for life, curse and all. That's the heat that breaks the frost. Not physical warmth, emotional warmth. The warmth of being chosen. Castor felt something shift in his chest. The emptiness was still there, but underneath it, something else was stirring. Something that felt almost like hope. But there's a catch, Rowena continued. The curse won't break immediately. It'll take time. You'll still feel cold. You'll still struggle. The magic doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about your choices. You have to keep choosing each other, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She closed her journal and slid it back under the bar. So that's your answer. You want to break the curse? Stop running from it. Stop letting it isolate you. Choose each other, commit to each other, and prove that love is stronger than spite. Rowena paused. Or don't. Walk away. Live separate lives. The curse might fade eventually if you never sleep near another person again. Might take a decade or 2, but it'll probably fade. That's not an option, Castor said quietly. Why not? Rowena asked. Because I already made my choice. 3 days ago, when I offered to share my fire. He turned to Kessa. I don't regret it. I won't regret it. If the price of helping you is carrying this curse until we figure out how to break it, Then that's the price. I'll pay it. Kessa was staring at him with eyes that were rapidly filling with tears. You barely know me, she whispered. I know enough. I know you asked permission to share warmth instead of taking it. I know you left your home to protect people you loved. I know you've been carrying guilt that isn't entirely yours for 4 years. That's enough. Castor took a breath. And I know that for the first time in 3 years, I don't feel completely alone. Even with this emptiness inside me, I feel less alone with you than I did before I met you. That has to count for something. The tears spilled over. Touching, Rowena said dryly. But words are cheap. You want to break the curse? Prove it. Make the commitment real. Not for the curse. For each other. Castor turned fully to face Kessa. Kessa, I can't offer you much. I'm a courier who lives in a rented room and owns exactly 3 shirts and a blanket my dead wife made. I'm not rich, I'm not important. I'm not even particularly brave most days. He paused. But I can offer you this. I will never ask you to be alone again. Whatever happens, wherever we go, whatever this curse does to us, you won't face it alone. I'll be cold with you. I'll struggle with you. I'll figure out how to break this curse with you. He held out his hand. Will you let me? Kessa looked at his outstretched hand, at his face, at the man who'd shared his fire and his tent and his blanket and now wanted to share his life. I'm cursed, she said. So am I. We match. I don't have anything to give you. You don't have to give me anything. Just let me give you something. Let me give you the one thing you've been missing. Let me give you warmth. Real warmth. The kind that doesn't go away. She took his hand. Her grip was strong, calloused from years of travel. Warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with choice. Yes, she said simply. Rowena made a satisfied noise. Well, that's a start. Now you just have to make it official. Human ceremony or orc. Doesn't matter to the curse. Just matters that you mean it. Both, Castor said. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Human and orc. Both traditions. Both peoples witness that we choose each other. That'll take time to arrange, Rowena warned. Then we'll take the time. Castor squeezed Kessa's hand. We've already got a curse counting down. What's a little more time? For the first time since Castor had met her, Kessa smiled. Really smiled. Not a sad smile or a grateful smile or a guilty smile. A real smile that reached her eyes and made her look younger. Happier. Okay, she said. Both traditions. Both peoples. Together. The word hung in the air between them. Together. Not a promise to break a curse. A promise to face it. Side by side. Cold or not. Rowena pulled out 2 glasses and poured water into each. Traditional toast on the house. To choosing each other when it would be easier to choose alone. They drank. The water was cold. The emptiness inside them was still there. But something had changed. Some fundamental shift in how that emptiness felt. It was still cold, but it was shared cold now. And somehow, that made it a little warmer. Arranging a dual ceremony, human and orc, in a border settlement was exactly as complicated as it sounded. Human ceremonies required a priest or civil official. Orc ceremonies required a shaman or clan elder. Finding both in Millhaven and convincing them to work together took 6 days. 40 silver coins in consultation fees, and more patience than Castor knew he possessed. The human priest, Father Benedict, was an old man who'd spent 30 years on the border and had apparently decided that if the gods wanted humans and orcs to hate each other, they wouldn't have made peace treaties possible. He agreed to perform the ceremony in exchange for a donation to his church and a promise that Castor and Kessa would try not to make him regret this. The orc shaman was harder. Her name was Graka, and she had the particular energy of someone who'd seen too much war to waste time on hate, but also too much history to trust easily. She agreed to help only after speaking privately with Kessa for 2 hours, after which she emerged looking thoughtful. Your curse is real, Graka told Castor. I can feel it, but so is your choice. The magic will recognize that. It may take time, but it will recognize it. How long? Castor asked. Graka shrugged. The heart doesn't work on schedules. Neither does curse breaking. You'll know when it's broken because you'll feel it. Until then, you endure. We've gotten good at that, Kessa said quietly. Yes, I can tell. The ceremony itself was small. Just them, the priest, the shaman, Rowena as witness, and a handful of curious onlookers who'd heard about the mixed marriage and wanted to see if it would actually happen. Father Benedict spoke the human vows first. Traditional words about love and partnership and choosing each other in sickness and health. Castor repeated them, meaning every word, his hand clasped tightly around Kessa's. Then Graka performed the orc ritual. It was less words and more symbolism. She tied their wrists together with a braided cord made of leather and wool. The binding was temporary. They'd untie it after the ceremony. But the symbolism was permanent. 2 lives intertwined, 2 paths becoming one. Strength is found in unity, Graka said in the orc tongue, which Father Benedict had agreed to let her speak. Honor is found in choosing. You have chosen each other. The spirits witness this. The ancestors witness this. We witness this. She untied the cord and handed it to Kessa. Keep this. It's yours now. A reminder that even when everything else fails, you have chosen each other. The ceremony ended. No grand celebration. No cheering crowd. Just 2 people who'd made promises to each other in front of gods and spirits and witnesses who weren't entirely sure this was a good idea but respected the attempt. Castor and Kessa left the small chapel hand in hand, now legally and spiritually bound by both human and orc traditions. Married, partners, together. The emptiness inside them didn't vanish. The cold didn't flee, but as they walked through Millhaven's streets toward the inn where they'd been staying, Castor noticed something. The cold felt different, less like absence, more like something waiting to thaw. How long do you think it'll take? Kessa asked quietly. For the curse to break? I don't know, Castor admitted. Days? Months? Years? What if it never breaks? Then we spend the rest of our lives being cold together. He squeezed her hand. I've been cold and alone for 3 years. Cold with you is infinitely better. They reached the inn. Their room, their shared room now, properly and officially, was small and simple. A bed, a chair, a window overlooking the market square. Castor hung the red blanket over the chair. The blanket that had been Marin's. The blanket that had started all of this. Do you think she'd approve? Kessa asked, nodding toward the blanket. Your wife. Do you think she'd approve of this? Of us? Castor thought about it. Really thought about it. Marin always said that the worst thing you can do is survive without living. She'd rather I lived and failed than survived and gave up. He turned to Kessa. I think she'd tell me that feeling cold with you is living, and living beats surviving every time. They climbed into bed together, no longer as strangers sharing warmth out of necessity, as partners, as people who'd chosen each other. The cold was still there. The emptiness was still there. But underneath it, something else was growing. Something that felt warm. Something that felt like home. Castor? Kessa's voice was sleepy. Thank you for seeing me as more than a curse. Thank you for asking me to share my warmth. Even when you were terrified, I'd say no. They fell asleep like that. 2 people carrying cold but building warmth. One choice at a time. One night at a time. And slowly, so slowly they almost didn't notice, the emptiness began to ease. Not gone. Not yet. But easing. Like ice beginning to melt. The curse didn't break overnight. It didn't break in a week. It didn't break in a month. It broke gradually. So gradually that Castor and Kessa almost didn't notice it happening. The first sign came 3 weeks after the ceremony. Castor woke up one morning and realized the emptiness inside him felt different. Not gone. Not even significantly smaller. Just different. Less sharp. Less like a wound and more like a scar. Do you feel that? He asked Kessa, who was still half asleep beside him. Feel what? The cold. It feels less cold. Kessa was quiet for a moment, checking her own internal temperature. Maybe. Or maybe we're just getting used to it. Maybe. But it wasn't just getting used to it. The second sign came a month later, when Kessa laughed at something stupid Castor said, a terrible joke about a merchant and a mule, and realized halfway through laughing that she felt genuinely happy. Not pretending to be happy. Not trying to be happy for Castor's sake. Actually, genuinely happy. I forgot what this felt like, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. The good kind of tears this time. What felt like? Joy. Real joy. Not just absence of sadness. Actual joy. They were living in a small cottage now, on the outskirts of a mixed settlement where humans and orcs had decided that proximity was better than separation. Castor had taken work as a translator. his human language skills and Kessa's orc tongue making them valuable to merchants who wanted to trade across species lines. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was stable, and they did it together. The third sign came 2 months after that, when Castor woke up in the middle of the night from a dream about Marin. Not a sad dream, a good dream. A memory of her laugh, her terrible cooking, her habit of singing off-key while she worked. He'd expected to feel guilty, expected to feel like he was betraying her memory by being happy with Kessa. Instead, he felt grateful. Grateful he'd loved her. Grateful he'd been loved. Grateful he'd learned what love looked like so he could recognize it again when it found him. "You okay?" Kessa mumbled, half awake. "Yeah, I'm okay." And he meant it. The fourth sign came 6 months after the ceremony, on the coldest night of winter. They were sitting by their fireplace, a real fireplace in their real home, wrapped in the red blanket together. And Castor realized something. "I'm warm," he said. "What?" "I'm warm. Actually warm. Inside warm. The cold isn't gone completely, but it's smaller, manageable, like embers instead of ice." Kessa checked her own internal temperature. Then her eyes went wide. "I feel it too. It's actually working. The curse is actually breaking." They sat there in stunned silence, holding each other, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace and everything to do with choice, with commitment, with the slow, steady decision to love each other even when it was hard. "How do we know when it's completely gone?" Kessa asked. "I don't think we'll know," Castor said. "I think it'll just fade, until one day we realize we can't remember the last time we felt that emptiness." He was right. The curse didn't break with a flash of magic or a moment of revelation. It broke the way ice breaks in spring, gradually, naturally, inevitably, one warm moment at a time. 3 months later, Kessa woke up and realized she couldn't remember what the cold inside her had felt like. Not because it was still there and familiar, but because it was gone and unfamiliar, like trying to remember pain after it's healed. You know it was there once, but you can't quite recall the sensation. "Castor," she said, shaking him awake. "Castor, it's gone." "What's gone?" "The curse, the cold, the emptiness. It's gone. I can't feel it anymore." Castor sat up, checking himself. She was right. The emptiness that had lived inside him for 3 years, first from grief, then from curse, was gone. Not replaced with anything dramatic, just gone, leaving behind normal feelings, normal warmth, normal humanness. "It worked," he said, almost disbelieving. "We actually broke it." "We actually broke it," Kessa echoed. They should have celebrated, should have shouted with joy or cried with relief or done something dramatic. Instead, they just held each other. Two people who'd chosen each other when choosing was hard. Two people who'd proven that warmth isn't something you find in other people. It's something you build together, one day at a time, one choice at a time. "What do we do now?" Kessa asked eventually. "I don't know. Live, I guess. Really live, not just survive." Living sounds good. They got dressed and made breakfast together. Nothing special. Just eggs and bread and terrible coffee that Castor somehow always made too strong. Normal things, boring things, beautiful things. As they sat at their small kitchen table, eating terrible eggs and drinking worse coffee, Castor looked at the red blanket hanging over the back of a chair, the blanket that had started everything. That had been the first warmth shared between them. "I think Marin would have liked you," he said suddenly. "Yeah? Yeah. She always said the best people are the ones who keep showing up even when it's hard. You've been showing up for 6 months even when it hurt. She would have respected that." Kessa smiled. "I wish I could have met her." "Me too." Castor reached across the table and took her hand. "But I think she'd be happy I found someone else to share that blanket with. Someone who needed it as much as I did." "Can I tell you something?" Kessa asked quietly. "Always. When I asked to feel your warmth that first night, I expected you to say no. Everyone always said no, but you said yes, and it changed everything. You changed everything." She paused. "I don't think I ever thanked you properly, for not treating me like a monster, for seeing me as a person, for choosing me when you could have walked away. You don't have to thank me for that. That's just being human." "No," Kessa said firmly. "It's being kind, and kind is better than human. Kind is better than orc. Kind is what breaks curses." They sat there in comfortable silence, holding hands across a kitchen table, Two people who'd been cold and alone and were now warm and together. Outside, spring was starting to arrive. Snow melting, birds returning, the world waking up from winter's sleep. Inside, two people were waking up too. Not from sleep, but from the long freeze of loneliness and grief and curse work. "You know what's funny?" Castor said eventually. "What?" "I came to Millhaven to deliver a letter. A simple courier job. 3 weeks of work, 30 silver pieces. That was supposed to be the whole story. And instead you got cursed and married an orc. Best wrong turn I ever made." Kessa laughed. That same genuine laugh from months ago. The one that meant real joy. "Come on," Castor said, standing and pulling her to her feet. "Let's go outside. I want to see what warmth looks like when it's not just something you share under blankets. I want to see it in sunlight." They walked out into the spring morning, hand in hand. Human and orc. Courier and traveler. Two people who'd been cursed and had chosen to break that curse not with magic, but with choice. The settlement was waking up around them. Merchants opening shops. Children running through streets. Orcs and humans conducting business. Sometimes friendly, sometimes wary, but always moving forward. Progress, Castor thought, looked a lot like two people choosing to see each other as human, regardless of what color their skin was or what language they spoke first. "Where do we go from here?" Kessa asked, echoing her earlier question. "Wherever we want," Castor replied. "That's the beautiful thing about breaking a curse. You get to choose what comes next." "I choose this," Kessa said simply. "This cottage, this life, this morning, you. Then that's what we'll have." They stood there in the morning sun, feeling genuine warmth for the first time in years. Not the warmth of fire or blanket or physical heat. The warmth of being chosen. The warmth of being seen. The warmth of being loved. Some stories end with grand gestures and dramatic moments. This one ended with two people drinking bad coffee and feeling sunshine and being quietly, simply happy. Because sometimes the most powerful magic isn't curses or spells or dramatic words spoken in rhyme. Sometimes the most powerful magic is just choice. The choice to see someone. The choice to help someone. The choice to love someone even when, especially when, it's hard. Castor looked at Kessa, his wife, his partner, his choice. "Can I feel your warmth tonight?" he asked, echoing her words from that first night. Kessa smiled. "Tonight, tomorrow night, every night. Yes." And they did. Not because a curse forced them to, not because loneliness drove them to, but because they chose it. Every day, every night, every moment. They chose warmth. They chose each other. They chose love. And in the end, that choice was stronger than any curse could ever be. Some victories aren't won on battlefields, but in quiet moments when we choose others over our own fear. When we choose warmth over safety. When we choose love over the cold. Castor and Kessa had been cold for so long. Alone for so long. Lost for so long. But they'd found each other. And in finding each other, they'd found something neither curse nor grief could take away. They'd found home. Not a place. Not a building. But a person. A choice. A promise kept every single day. And that was warm enough. Subscribe to the Orcbound Tales channel for more exciting fantasy stories. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone feel your warmth, even when you're cold inside.